I know. I've committed the cardinal Boba sin. Hello everyone, Baby Boba here. Welcome back to a brand new news roundup video in where we're getting into, as usual, all kinds of things. And yes, I know, Baby Boba's back having skin issues. Felt like the skin needed to breathe. And I know I look younger because I literally got ID'd when my food shopping arrived the other day. And they were like, sorry, gotta think 25. And I'm like, mate, I'm turning 31 this year, so a compliment, I guess. But yes, I want to dive into very interesting DC updates today, as well as sprinkling other bits and bobs in here. As always, these videos are timestamped, so if you want to stay up to date with everything and all of my takes, I recommend watching the whole video. And check out yesterday's video if you haven't done so already. I go over the top things you guys need to see in the DCU and give my takes on your takes. If you've checked it out already, thank you for your support. But today's first story goes into Lanterns, and trust me, this gets more and more and more interesting to the point of where I'm like, okay, I need to try and contain my hype for what we could be learning with regards to the villain, the ancient horror. But before we get to that, I know a lot of you have been like, Boba, why haven't you been talking about the Green Arrow? You love Green Arrow. Why are you talking about Green Arrow in Lanterns? Well, if you don't know the backstory behind this, essentially, Garrett Dillahunt, who is playing William Mason in Lanterns, this conspiracy-minded man, you probably recognize me or are familiar with me talking about him before, but all of a sudden, he put on his Instagram story, storyboard, or like reposting something from Seth Adams' art, and I believe Seth Adams is a comic book artist, and it's of Oliver Queen there in the middle, right? And then the next slide of his Instagram story was him as Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow, in what looks to be the CW's Green Arrow Stephen Amell, mask. And people are like, he just gave away that he's Green Arrow in Lanterns. And you have all these outlets, it looks like Garrett Dillahunt will be playing Oliver Queen. And there's some other outlets who or fan pages or news pages, putting it out there way more decisively, saying he is the Green Arrow. I'm like, every time something like this happens, so many people believe it. And look, if you're one of those people, I'm not hating. We've all been there before, but this happens way too much. Like recently with that bloody John Campea video clip that was going around online, all of a sudden, the Batman Part 2 is cancelled. And who knows if it will be one day. I'm just saying it isn't right now, but people believe that clip. And this didn't make sense to me right out the gate. I looked at it, I was like, okay. To me, this just like Garrett Dillahunt is just doing something with Seth Adams, some maybe comic book thing. Who knows what it is? Seth Adams, as far as I'm aware, isn't working on Lanterns. The reason why they deleted their stories, which people used as further evidence, was probably because they were giving the wrong end of the stick to thousands of fans. And also, William Mason, all while I'm very familiar with production code names for characters or false descriptions and stuff, it really didn't sound anything like the character he would be playing. And also, I actually saw whole news outlets put out entire articles about entertaining the fact that Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow, could be the antagonist that Hal and John would be going up against in the Lantern series. But yes, James Gunn got asked by a fan saying, okay, is Garrett Dillahunt playing Oliver Queen? He was like, haha, no. Now, yes, I would like Oliver Queen to come to the DCU. We actually talk about that in my previous video, in the top wants and needs for the DCU. Now, what I will say is Garrett Dillahunt could be playing an incredibly interesting character, and we're going to get into that in just a second. But first, since we're talking about Lanterns, and that Green Arrow story is out the way, so debunked, don't believe it, just put that out of your mind. We have a new casting for the Lanterns show, and this is where we go into a bit of a deep dive rabbit hole before going on to some other news stories. Now, for those of you who are excited for Lanterns or know a bit more about Lanterns lore, this casting of Paul Ben Victor joining the Lanterns DC series at HBO from Deadline here has brought about some really interesting ideas that I can't wait to go over, because it all ties back to the ancient horror thing. So they say he's playing a key recurring role. Ben Victor will play Antan, an extraterrestrial devoted to exposing the truth and exacting vengeance against those who wronged his people. Consumed by a deep and unrelenting hatred for the law, he is determined to deliver justice on his own terms. Now, this really starts to sound like another character in the Green Lantern mythos, if you will. The more you look into it, the more it's like, damn, like we need to try and, as I try and caution here, it's fun to like wear the fan goggles, but we need to like try and stay rooted and not get overhyped or set expectations is another thing. And the reason why I say that is because it is exciting to ponder how Atrocitus could come into this series and how, since we knew way back when James Gunn and Peter Safran were talking about Lanterns, is that it is a very important show that plays a larger part in the overarching story of the DCU. And ever since then, I've been racking my brain about, okay, what do they uncover? Is it the center psychic related to this town? Is there like some center code? Are they attempting to awaken Necron, but not obviously truly do a Blackest Night thing within a Lantern show? That's just way too much within one little bubble of a series. But, you know, maybe a try and failed attempt at awakening an ancient horror. Now, that could be the slither of a trail that could end up being true in a long distance future kind of thing with regards to Blackest Night. Now, when I say Blackest Night, people often like to go, oh my God, they're not going to do Blackest Night right. No, I'm not saying they're going to do Blackest Night right away. Obviously not. Lanterns, as Gunn and Safran has said, and you've probably heard me pull up those quotes a billion times before, is a series that is, again, really important to the overarching story of the DCU, but is one that will kind of reverberate, you know, the story in between different movies and shows. So up next, related to this, we have Apocalyptic Horseman, who works with Nexus Point News. He writes stories. He's a really, really reliable scooper. So Apocalyptic Horseman with Lanterns has been really on the ball since his pre-production and everything. And here he says, "This is who I was teasing when I said there would be another villain in Lanterns. I believed he would be Atrocitus, but they're still referring to him as Antan. Also, I know they wanted to cast a tall actor, but he is 5'7". Not sure if it's Atrocitus in disguise or an original character. But if you read the description, it sounds an awful lot like Atrocitus. In the comics, he blames the Guardians for destroying his planet with the Manhunters." So if you don't know who Atrocitus is and how all of this could really play into the Lanterns show, especially a show that is evidently giving us flashbacks, because we've got like present day castings for Jon Stewart's parents, but also younger castings, and this could also play into Sinestro and his days mentoring Howard Jordan before things went sideways there. It's like, okay, maybe they could tell a story about, you know, obviously with how Hal originally got his ring, how that links back to Atrocitus, and how this could still come into play with the Blackest Night prophecy and all of that stuff. I don't want to spend ages on this because this could basically be its own video at this point, but this gets me really excited, and just to let you know, I might do a whole separate video for where things could go with this. So, Apocalyptic Horseman, full credit to his theory here, is saying, "Theory time for Lanterns. Assuming Ben Victor is playing Atrocitus, I think the show is gonna pull from John's secret origin and plant the seeds for Blackest Night." So, the story tells Hal's origin, and while the show has an older Hal, they could use Hal in Sinestro's place as the mentor and have John take young Hal's place in the story. We're introduced to Atrocitus' origins and how he was on Abin Sur's ship when he crashed on Earth, and that's true because that was the whole Blackest Night thing that Abin Sur wanted to look into. At this point, Atrocitus, you know, is at war with the Guardians and whatnot for God knows how, like this, he goes back eons, essentially. But Abin Sur wanted to look into the Blackest Night prophecy, so he brought Atrocitus with him to Earth, but that's when Atrocitus screws with the ship, screws with Abin Sur dies, and that's how his ring flies off his finger and finds Hal Jordan. So continuing on here, we're also introduced to a younger Black Hand with a new origin. William Hand could very well end up being William or Billy Mason. Literally, we got William Mason in the show played by Garrett Dillahunt, and Billy Mason, his son, which, you know, Billy is a nickname for William as well. So you could argue, even though it's kind of on the nose, but William Mason, and we have explored this in DCU discussion series theory videos before, and how I've said, you know, maybe, you know, you could do the whole Black Hand thing with William. I didn't entertain his son, though, Billy, at the time. So that's interesting. There's technically two Williams that could become William Hand, attempting to bring about Necron, maybe. But anyway, after Surge's ship crashes and the Ring finds Hal, Atrocitus could then find Hand and tell him he's the key to the Blackest Night prophecy. Now, I can see Hal and John defeating Atrocitus and sending him back to Yasmalt to eventually become a Red Lantern if he's not one already, and Hand/Mason stealing Atrocitus's power rod to actually become Black Hand. Again, this is just a theory, but throw that in with how adaptations don't copy and paste. You know, here in present day, we've got an older Hal Jordan. They're throwing Sinestro into the mix. There's an ancient horror that they uncover. There's a conspiracy-minded man at the root of this town who's an antagonist, and there's community secrets emerging. There's a murder in this American heartland. It does feel like now with this casting as well of Paul Ben-Victor playing Antan, an extraterrestrial, so an alien devoted to exposing the truth and exacting vengeance. Like Atrocitus, like poor guy, I'm not gonna lie, like his whole home was obliterated, massacred by the Manhunters who were created by the Guardians. And yes, it all does tie in the comics long-term wise into Blackest Night, which the Lantern show could eventually set up and kind of go back and forth with those flashback scenes and, you know, in the present day, slowly but surely unfolding into this wider investigation and where they stumble across a deeper, darker, terrible truth that is the Blackest Night prophecy, and William Hand, or William Mason becoming maybe the Black Hand could tie into that suit fitting we saw him getting behind the scenes. I don't know. And again, I do want to absolutely emphasize one of my most famous sayings on the channel. Adaptations don't copy and paste. So there is room for innovation, changing things up a bit to that of the typical structure to get to Black Hand in the comics. But I can imagine maybe something like Atrocitus being in the series and them uncovering or like recontextualizing things like with perspective of the past and how Hal got his ring and how it links to his predecessor and what happened to him. And I'm sure he already knows about the whole Atrocitus thing, but he maybe never truly peeled back the curtain of, but what was Abin Sur truly looking into with this Blackest Night thing? Oh, this Blackest Night thing was like a little whisper back then. It was nothing, John. But no, it's now in their face in present day as they investigate. And it's like, I can imagine that episode structure, like coming back into Hal's life and it's like, oh, I disregarded this. A lot of people did, but now there could be something more to it. But now we need to move away from Lanterns and talk about Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. I do want to give another spoiler warning here, even though what we're about to show with regards to Lobo isn't like super up close or anything like that, which is why we haven't had official reveals, because, you know, a lot of people have been wondering why haven't they revealed the Lobo look, the Supergirl look, because this set leak stuff is getting out there. I think that's quite simply because they don't feel like they have to. It would be a different story if you had an up close look to the point of where you could see little texture patterns on Supergirl's suit or her skirt or like the details in her gold belt, to stuff like that. But since you can't see that up close, they don't feel compelled to give you a better look because it's still obscure enough away where it's like, okay, I can tell that's Lobo, but you know, that kind of feeling. However, it is now great to see Lobo, and a massive shout out again to Unbox PhD Film for allowing me to show this. I will leave a link to their footage of the Supergirl set down in the description below, just in case you don't want to see anything, even if it is from a distance. I'll give you this opportunity to skip to the next timestamp in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right, okay, so now you're seeing on screen. I know there's not too much to say here, but yes, I will now say that the Lobo we saw before on set, or what we thought, or who we thought was Lobo, wasn't Lobo, and it was probably some alien guard. But now you see this guy and I say this guy because it could be Jason Momoa, but you could argue it could be a double. That is definitely more akin to Lobo, because a lot of people were saying on the previous guy who we thought it was that he had too much armor and stuff, and I was like, well, maybe you could argue they might be changing the design a little bit, but no, here you could actually see a very Lobo look. Arms are all out, so less armor there, more of just a coat, a very tall guy. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if this was Momoa just rehearsing a scene. And what's happening, and I say rehearsing a scene is because, you know, they're obviously trying to practice him throwing something, latching onto the dude, pulling him forward for the sequence, and then I guess for Lobo to take this guard or henchman or whoever it is out. Now, the reason why this is so cool is because I think that's like Lobo's sickle, if you will, that's on a chain, and he's like launching it forward. It like hooks into the guy, the sickle's like attached to him, and he gets like yeeted forward by Lobo for him to like proper like smack him down or something like that. We can't get a good sense of the design, clearly, which is why I don't think, you know, Warner Brothers, as I said, is releasing a whole Lobo reveal. It is all you could tell is like, oh yeah, that's definitely Lobo throwing his like little chain sickle there. But it's still cool to see this unfolding, and it whets the appetite to want to see more from Momoa's Lobo. Now, in some Superman news, a little update to the whole court thing with regards to, oh, will it release everywhere in the UK, Canada, and stuff like that? Well, surprise, surprise, a federal judge here from DC Film News, re-reporting this, reposting it, on Thursday dismissed Superman co-creators' estate in their bid to reclaim foreign copyrights and blocking the new film, citing lack of jurisdiction. Superman will release in Canada, the UK, Ireland, and Australia without issue. Now, I say surprise, surprise, it's just because, you know, if you've looked into this a bit, you will know that in various different angles and attempts, stuff like this, like it, has been attempted before. But I know to a lot of people who just read the headlines and see this, it causes concern, being like, oh man, could this seriously impact the film? And in a way, like, obviously, if they were successful, it would have, if it could have released where I live and many other territories, but it was just very unlikely, and now we finally have that apparently settled in, well, at least dismissed. Like, the judge literally was like, get out of here. Like, it's dismissed. So don't worry about that. Apparently, all is in order with regards to the Superman lawsuit. Then in other DC news, this is going to be very brief, but I wanted to bring up Gunn posting this Peacemaker photo. I believe it's actually even from the same scene that we saw in some of the extended footage that was released from that HBO Max, or, well, Max sizzle reel. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this is just, you know, we're in April now, about to go into May. It gets me excited about the prospect of a Season 2 trailer, since we know Season 2 is releasing in August. So just to give you guys some idea, for Season 1, we had the official teaser, so the first glimpse, the teaser trailer, not the official one, but the teaser trailer, released on October 16th, and then the series released on January 13th the following year. So maybe if they follow a similar, roughly similar approach, we could get our very first teaser trailer towards maybe the mid to back end of May, so next month. We're gonna have to wait and see, obviously, but sometime around then we should really be getting, again, not like a full-blown official trailer, but a teaser trailer. So just make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on anything Peacemaker Season 2. Now, flipping things over to the MCU Marvel side of things with regards to Thunderbolts reviews, and it's a very good sign. Now, Thunderbolts, believe it or not, is one of the first movies in quite a while in the MCU. It's not the first project necessarily, because it's like Daredevil Born Again and things like that, which I was really looking forward to. But one of the first movies where I was like, you know what? From the trailers and the marketing, it looked like a really, really good project. In terms of setting itself aside from the typical formulaic cookie cutter approach. And that was always interesting to me because, you know, on paper, if I looked at it, it's like, okay, yeah, I like Yelena, Red Guardian, Bucky, US Agent, to whoever else, but you know, I would worry that it would just come across as, I know what I'm getting, another MCU movie where I'm sure it will be entertaining, but ultimately a popcorn movie. These days, am looking for something that doesn't feel repetitive, even if it's still entertaining. And what I would say with Thunderbolts from the marketing is that it actually, there's something about it, something that I can't quite grasp, where it really did feel like, okay, you know what? Let's put it this way. I am going to buy a ticket to see it. Now, some of these reviews, friend of the channel here, 3C Films, I know you guys know 3C, saw it and says Thunderbolts is a real breath of fresh air. That's all I want to hear already. It's a breath of fresh air in the MCU. Absolutely loved the team dynamic. It's also rich with emotions. Movies need emotions. You guys know my philosophy and ideology on that. Tackling pretty serious self-worth issues. Yelena carries the movie. Best part, it's 95% standalone with 5% setup. But that 5%, though, really felt like old MCU. That's great to hear. Jacob Fisher, basically the head of Discussing Film. Thunderbolts is truly fantastic. The cast has electric chemistry with each other. Florence Pugh and Lewis Pullman are the standouts. And the action sequences are very strong. But most of all, the film's story hit me like a ton of bricks. It's bold, important, and so well written. Like, guys, if this wasn't good, like, I know these particular reviewers would just be like, yeah, I like this and that, but ultimately, I'm sorry to say. But it's getting glowing reviews. Brandon Davis here saying Thunderbolts is for any and all of us who have ever felt like we're not enough. Florence Pugh is its brilliant heart, and David Harbour as a perfect shot of life. It really has something to say about self-worth and growth. Great action too. Genuinely quite fantastic. Loved it. So I'm going to see it. I'm going to review it. And I am looking forward to it because I am telling you, my radar started going beep, 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 like literally in terms of vibe-o-meter for this movie, which doesn't happen all the time with MCU stuff. So to feel like validated in a lot of people coming out and saying that this is like really genuinely decent, I'm hoping to go into that movie, get what I want out of it, and come back and hopefully give a glowing review. Hopefully, but let me know what you think. Keep an eye out for a review on the channel. Let me know if you're interested in seeing a Thunderbolts review as well. And then in other DC news, technically speaking here, we had, and I completely forgot to cover this in a previous news roundup, a week ago now, Netflix dropped, it's not an official trailer, it's not even a teaser trailer, it was just a date announcement for the Sandman Season 2, which is releasing July 3rd, and then the second half of the season, July 24th. You could kind of look at it as a teaser trailer, though, because it does give us a bit more of an extended look compared to the previous look that we got. And it does look really, really, really good in terms of the production, the accuracy to the source material, the things to look forward to in general for Season 2, especially as they are closing up the entire Sandman story. It does, I have to admit, it does still feel like weird with regards to the Neil Gaiman stuff, putting such an unfortunate taint on the optics of this series. Now, obviously, that doesn't reflect the showrunner, all the cast, the crew, who worked incredibly hard to bring this show to life. And, you know, I know some people say, oh, you know, the first season was a bit slow, I couldn't really get into it. But those who like the world of the comics of the Sandman, and then you watch the show, and you saw how faithful and well portrayed that was, the acting by Tom Sturridge, the entire cast, the way it was written and stuff, you will know like how good it is in terms of like a source material adaptation. And like this doesn't look any different. It looks just as quality as season 1, if not more improved. But then again, you have this whole black cloud of the whole Neil Gaiman thing floating over it. So I guess I would like to know, A, what do you guys think of the Sandman Season 2 teaser kind of thing? Are you a fan of Season 1? Will you be watching Season 2? And what is your whole perspective on the way Season 2 is releasing with this whole, again, big black cloud, you know, raining on it from left, right, and center with the seriously messed up allegations that Neil Gaiman is facing. And on the Disney side of things, I know I need to pick things up with Star Wars, because Star Wars is one of my biggest passions as well. However, you know, I know that's kind of dwindled for a lot of us fans in the past decade or so. But, you know, Andor Season 2 debuted with a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. The same score as Season 1, according to Discussing Film here. Believe it or not, I haven't even watched the first 3 episodes, and that's not me not liking it, because Andor, in my opinion, is literally the best piece, highest quality in every sense of the word, writing, everything that Disney Star Wars has ever put out, period. I want to sit down, turn the lights off and blast it on the TV. And I haven't done a review because last time I did a review for season 1, nobody tuned in to watch it. But let me know if you would like to see a season something, maybe something review video about Andor. I'm not against it. I know there's a lot of other things in Star Wars going on. Obviously, we had a lot of news coming out with Hayden Christensen returning as Anakin in Ahsoka season 2. Not really a shocker there, given that he'll probably pop up to speak to Ahsoka again. Zeb returning, of course. We got that new Star Wars Maul Shadow Lord series, which is, I mean, Sam Witwer. I mean, I've been a fan of his ever since Star Wars The Force Unleashed. Man, I remember that game when it came out. That just blew my mind. But obviously, Maul, Sam Witwer he is Maul. So to think that we're now going to get a new series in where apparently Maul navigates life before the events of Rebels, including training a Padawan. And if you know who that Padawan is, oh my God. Things could get interesting there, but at the same time, I'm kind of hesitant about it because of the way things have been handled before. Obviously, there's a lot of Star Wars stuff I could cover. I just wanted to sprinkle a tiny piece of commentary at the end of this video just because I want to gauge interest on your thoughts about my opinions on other franchises like Star Wars. And you know me, if I had an editor, because I'm a one-man band here, which is why I can only cover so much stuff and I can't output it like other channels, I would be putting out stuff like all the time. But like editors cost a lot of money. I can't necessarily afford that. But hey, if there's a lot of demand for it, I will put my thoughts out there. Or maybe I can just record a video that's more of a ramble, less editing, and then at least it's some kind of content. But that is everything from today's news roundup video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the ramble as always. I really enjoyed rambling in this one in particular, especially going into the Lantern stuff. If you got to this part of the video, would greatly appreciate a like. Check out yesterday's video if you haven't done so already for a bit more of a deep dive into the broader DCU and things that could be coming our way. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.